Picture this. You are lying in bed at midnight. The room is dark. The house is quiet. And your mind is running at full speed. Not because something is wrong, not because you are stressed, but because that is simply what your brain does. It replays a conversation from 3 days ago. It builds arguments for questions nobody asked. It jumps between philosophy, regret, pattern recognition, and the meaning of something someone said in passing. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet thought forms. Why can't I just switch this off? If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because what most people don't realize is that extreme intelligence is not the simple advantage we were taught to believe it is. Today, we are going to explore what psychology actually says about living with an exceptionally high IQ. Not the surface-level habits, not the list of famous geniuses, the real stuff, the part that rarely gets talked about, the internal experience, the hidden costs, and the one pattern that explains why so many of the most intelligent people you'll ever meet are quietly living far below their own potential. We'll get to that last part near the end, and I think it will change how you see intelligence entirely. But first, there is a question worth sitting with. If high intelligence is supposed to be an advantage, why do so many gifted minds end up feeling more exhausted than exceptional? Hold that question. We're going to answer it. Psychology researchers use a phrase to describe a trait found consistently in people with very high IQ. They call it a strong need for cognition. It means that for most people, thinking is a tool. You pick it up when you need it and put it down when you don't. But for a high IQ mind, thinking is not a tool. It is a state of being. Psychologists sometimes describe it as an internal motor, a cognitive engine that keeps running long after the external world has gone quiet. The average brain relaxes when there is nothing demanding its attention. The high IQ brain often does the opposite. The absence of external stimulation is precisely when the engine gets loudest. This is not a personality flaw. It is a neurological pattern. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for analysis, prediction, and complex reasoning, is simply more active. And while that activity is extraordinarily useful for solving problems, it comes with a real psychological cost. When the brain cannot stop generating possibilities, making a simple decision can feel strangely overwhelming. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, the state where a mind capable of remarkable insight becomes trapped in endless loops of prediction and doubt. The very engine that makes someone brilliant can also make it very hard to simply be still. High intelligence doesn't just make you faster at solving problems. It reshapes the way you see the world. A highly analytical mind notices things most people filter out. The contradictions in what someone says versus how they say it. The structural flaws in systems that everyone else treats as normal. The gap between how things are and how they could be. At first, this feels like insight, and in many ways it is. But over time, seeing more of reality than the average person is forced to confront becomes psychologically heavy. A Polish psychologist named Kazimierz Dabrowski studied gifted individuals for decades and found something that surprised him. Highly intelligent people didn't just think more intensely, they experienced everything more intensely. He called this overexcitability, a heightened sensitivity of the nervous system where the psychological volume dial is simply turned up higher. Emotions hit harder. Injustice lands differently. A beautiful piece of music or a quiet conversation at the end of a long day can carry a weight that others find difficult to understand. And that intensity, which can produce extraordinary creativity and deep empathy, is the same intensity that makes the world feel like too much on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Here is the part most videos on this topic skip past: the social experience of an extremely high IQ mind. Not the stereotype of the genius who is too smart to connect with people, the quieter, more painful reality, which is that many highly intelligent individuals become experts at pretending. When your mind naturally moves toward complexity and the social world around you moves toward small talk, you face a choice every single day. Do you show up as you actually are? Or do you simplify, pull back, perform a version of yourself that fits more comfortably into the room? Most gifted people, over time, learn to mask. They shrink their vocabulary in certain settings. They hold back the observation that everyone else would find strange. They laugh at things that don't quite land. And it works, socially. They fit in well enough. But the psychological cost of that performance accumulates. You can be surrounded by people and still feel profoundly alone. Not because you dislike them, but because the version of you that showed up tonight is not the version that actually lives inside your head. That quiet gap between your inner world and your social world is one of the most common and least discussed experiences among highly intelligent adults. Now we arrive at the question we planted at the beginning. If high intelligence is an advantage, why do so many gifted minds end up feeling more exhausted than exceptional? Here is what psychology reveals. Many people with extremely high IQ are not living the lives their intelligence would seem to predict. They are teachers grading papers at midnight. They are people 3 chapters into a novel they started 4 years ago. They are brilliant individuals, quietly stuck in ordinary circumstances, carrying a persistent, unnamed feeling that something is not quite right, that they are capable of more, and somehow also completely unable to reach it. This is what researchers sometimes call the underachievement paradox. And the reason it happens is not laziness. It is not failure of discipline. It is this. When your internal standard of what is possible is extremely high, when you can visualize the ideal outcome with uncomfortable clarity, the gap between that vision and reality can feel so discouraging that starting or continuing becomes genuinely difficult. Perfectionism, born not from vanity, but from intelligence. The ability to see exactly how good something could be becomes the very thing that makes it hard to produce anything at all. And so the most capable version of a person remains locked inside, not for lack of talent, but because that talent has never found an environment, a structure, or a community that made the risk of showing up fully feel safe enough to take. So where does this leave us? Living with an extremely high IQ is not the simple gift the world assumes it is. It is an engine that doesn't switch off. It is the weight of seeing more complexity than most people have to carry. It is the quiet performance of ordinariness in a world that doesn't always have space for how your mind actually works. And it is the strange, specific loneliness of being capable of something you haven't fully found yet. But here is what matters. None of this is a flaw. None of it is damage. It is what happens when a highly sensitive, deeply active mind grows up in a world that was not quite built for it. And the moment a person with that kind of mind finds the right environment, finds people who think the same way, ask the same questions, and don't require that smaller, quieter version of themselves to show up, everything changes. The engine that once felt like a burden becomes exactly what it was always meant to be. If any part of this felt uncomfortably accurate, you are not alone in that. Drop a thought in the comments, even just a word. The people already down there will understand exactly what you mean. And if this kind of content speaks to you, subscribing means more conversations like this one. In the next video, we are going to look at something closely connected to this: why highly intelligent people are so often misread by the people closest to them, and what that misreading actually costs both sides. It is a harder conversation, and I think it is worth having.